A peaceful funeral service, ruthless outlaws seeking revenge, and a corpse whose secret will challenge everything you believe about life, death, and the thin line between justice and vengeance. Sometimes the dead have their own agenda, and sometimes the most dangerous person at a funeral is the one in the coffin. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and hit the notification bell. This helps us bring you more powerful stories like this one. The autumn sun cast long shadows across Riverside Cemetery as mourners gathered around the mahogany casket of Vincent, the ghost, Castellanos. The service was small, respectful, exactly what you'd expect for a retired mechanic who'd lived quietly in the same neighborhood for 20 years. Father Martinez spoke about eternal rest and forgiveness while family members wept for the man they'd lost to cancer just 3 days earlier. Maria Castellanos stood beside the grave, clutching a folded American flag as tears streamed down her weathered face. Her husband of 40 years had been everything to her: provider, protector, and the gentle soul who'd helped her raise 3 children into successful adults. Vincent had worked honest jobs, paid his taxes, and never caused trouble for anyone. What the mourners didn't know was that 3 men on motorcycles were watching the service from across the cemetery, waiting for the perfect moment to deliver a message 15 years in the making. Marcus "Viper" Rodriguez pointed at the casket through binoculars, his face twisted with hatred. "That's him. Vincent Castellanos, the son of a bitch who testified against the blood serpents and got half our crew life sentences." His partner Jake "Razor" Collins spat in the dirt, his scarred hands gripping his handlebars. 15 years we've been waiting for this. 15 years that bastard lived free while our brothers rotted in federal prison because of his testimony." The third man, Tommy "Psycho" Martinez, revved his Harley impatiently, his dead eyes reflecting years of rage and hatred. "Should have done this years ago. Let his family know what happens to rats who cooperate with federal prosecutors." They'd spent months tracking Vincent Castellanos after learning he'd moved to this quiet suburb under a new identity. The blood serpents had long memories, and betrayal demanded payment even after death. The plan was simple: crash the funeral, terrorize the mourners, and desecrate the grave to send a message about the consequences of crossing their organization. But as the 3 outlaws prepared their assault, they failed to notice several details that would have changed everything. The cemetery's security cameras were more sophisticated than typical installations. Several mourners had the bearing of law enforcement despite wearing civilian clothes. And most importantly, the funeral director kept checking his watch with the nervous energy of someone expecting trouble. At 3:15 p.m., just as Father Martinez began the final blessing, the 3 blood serpents roared into the cemetery on their motorcycles, engines thundering across the peaceful grounds like harbingers of violence. "Everybody on the ground!" Viper shouted, pulling out a .45 caliber pistol as his bike skidded to a stop near the gravesite. "This is blood serpent's business." The mourners scattered in terror, but Maria Castellanos refused to move from beside her husband's casket, her elderly frame trembling but defiant. "Please," she begged, "this is a funeral. Have some respect for the dead." "Your husband didn't have respect for the living when he ratted out our crew," Razor snarled, dismounting his bike with a crowbar in hand. "Time to show him what happens to snitches, even dead ones." As the 3 outlaws advanced on a gravesite, ready to terrorize an elderly widow and desecrate her husband's final resting place, none of them noticed the slight vibration coming from inside the mahogany casket. "Vincent Castellanos destroyed our family," Psycho announced, raising his crowbar to smash the headstone. "Now we destroy his." That's when the impossible happened. The casket lid opened from the inside. Vincent Castellanos sat up in his coffin, very much alive and pointing a .357 Magnum directly at the 3 stunned outlaws. "Gentlemen," Vincent said calmly, brushing dirt from his funeral suit, "I've been expecting you." The 3 blood serpents stared in absolute shock as Vincent climbed out of his own coffin, weapon steady despite having spent 3 days in a burial box. "That's impossible," Viper whispered, his own gun trembling in his hands. "You're dead. We confirmed it. Cancer took you 3 days ago." Vincent stretched his stiff muscles and smiled coldly, his movements precise despite the cramped conditions he'd endured. "Cancer was just a cover story, Marcus. Amazing what modern medicine and a good makeup artist can accomplish when you need to disappear convincingly." The mourners had stopped fleeing and were now forming a perimeter around the cemetery. Maria Castellanos wiped away her tears and pulled out a service weapon, no longer appearing to be a grieving widow but moving with the confidence of trained law enforcement. "Federal Agent Maria Santos," she announced, her voice carrying authority that hadn't been there moments before. "You're surrounded by FBI tactical teams." Razor looked around wildly as he realized the mourners were actually federal agents taking defensive positions throughout the cemetery, emerging from behind monuments and maintenance buildings like ghosts materializing from a landscape. "This is a setup." Father Martinez removed his clerical collar, revealing the tactical vest underneath his robes. "Agent Rodriguez, FBI. Gentlemen, you're under arrest for conspiracy, terrorism, and threatening federal witnesses." Vincent Castellanos stepped fully out of his casket, and the blood serpents could see he was wearing body armor beneath his funeral suit, his entire appearance transformed from peaceful corpse to dangerous operative. "You want to know the real story? I never testified against the blood serpents. I was an undercover federal agent gathering evidence on your organization." "That's impossible," Psycho protested, his voice cracking with disbelief. "You were Vincent Castellanos, neighborhood mechanic. We watched you for years." Vincent's smile turned predatory, 15 years of careful planning finally reaching fruition. "I was Agent Vincent Santos, FBI, deep cover for 8 years documenting Blood Serpent's criminal activities. The testimony you've been angry about came from surveillance equipment, not witness cooperation." Maria stepped closer, her weapon never wavering as she addressed the three outlaws with professional precision. "My husband spent 8 years infiltrating your organization while building a legitimate cover identity. The evidence that convicted your crew came from recordings, photographs, and financial documents he gathered during deep cover operations." The three outlaws were beginning to understand they'd walked into an elaborate federal trap designed specifically for them, their simple revenge mission transformed into a federal case. "The cancer diagnosis was fake," Vincent continued, enjoying their confusion and terror. "The death was staged. This funeral was bait to draw out Blood Serpent's members who'd been threatening federal witnesses for 15 years. Viper looked around the cemetery, seeing federal agents emerging from positions that had been occupied for hours, maybe days. "How long have you been planning this?"
Lo que siguió durante los siguientes minutos fue completamente diferente de cualquier experiencia dental que hubiera tenido en mi vida. Santiago utilizó técnicas que definitivamente no habían enseñado en la escuela de odontología, pero que fueron increíblemente efectivas para distraerme del dolor. Cuando finalmente me dijo que abriera los ojos, la muela ya no me dolía y me sentía diferente, más relajado, más conectado, más vivo de lo que me había sentido en años. ¿Cómo se siente?, me preguntó, sonriendo mientras guardaba sus instrumentos, como si hubiera experimentado algo completamente nuevo, respondí honestamente. ¿Y el dolor? ¿Qué dolor?, pregunté. Y era verdad. La muela ya no me molestaba en absoluto. Perfecto, dijo Santiago, quitándose los guantes. El tratamiento fue un éxito completo. ¿Eso es todo?, pregunté, sintiéndome extrañamente decepcionado de que la cita hubiera terminado. Eso es todo para el tratamiento dental, respondió. Pero había algo en su sonrisa que sugería que no era todo en general. ¿Qué pasa ahora?, pregunté. Santiago se acercó a la silla una vez más, pero esta vez no como mi dentista. Ahora, dijo, me gustaría invitarlo a cenar, para asegurarme de que se sienta bien después del tratamiento. Por supuesto, pregunté, sonriendo. Completamente profesional, confirmó con una sonrisa traviesa. ¿Qué dice? Digo que sí, respondí inmediatamente, pero tengo una pregunta. ¿Cuál? ¿Realmente necesitaba tratamiento dental, o fue todo una excusa elaborada para esto? Santiago se rió y me ayudó a sentarme en la silla. Iván, definitivamente necesitaba tratamiento dental, pero la forma en que elegí tratarlo, esa fue completamente personal. Santiago me ayudó a levantarme de la silla dental, y cuando estuve de pie, me di cuenta de que me sentía ligeramente mareado, no por el tratamiento, sino por la intensidad de lo que acababa de experimentar. ¿Se siente bien?, me preguntó, manteniendo una mano ligeramente en mi brazo para estabilizarme. Sí, solo necesito un momento para procesar todo esto, admití. Entiendo completamente, dijo, guiándome hacia una silla normal en su consultorio. Lo que acabamos de experimentar fue único. Me senté y lo miré, tratando de entender qué había pasado exactamente. Santiago, comencé. Necesito preguntarte algo. Lo que sea.
Director
Haces
Walsh
esto con
hesitated
todos tus
before
pacientes.
revealing names that would
Una
transform their
expresión
victory
seria
into
cruzó por su
something much more
rostro y se
complex.
sentó en su taburete
Agent
frente a
David
mí.
Morrison,
Iván,
Agent Susan
nunca,
Chen,
y cuando
and
digo
prosecutor
nunca, quiero
Michael
decir jamás en mi
Rodriguez,
carrera
all
profesional,
people who
había
worked on
hecho
the
algo
Blood
así.
Serpent's case.
Usted es
Vincent felt
completamente
the world
único.
shifting beneath
¿Qué
him
tiene
as
de
he
único?
realized the true
Pregunté,
scope of the
genuinamente
conspiracy.
curioso.
Jennifer
Su
wasn't killed by
vulnerabilidad,
blood
su
serpents
confianza,
seeking
la forma en
revenge.
que respondió
She
cuando
was
le pedí
killed
que
by her
confiara en
own
mí,
colleagues to
despertó
prevent her
algo en
from
mí que no
exposing
sabía
their
que
corruption.
existía. Se
That's
acercó
what the
más,
evidence
sus
suggests,
ojos fijos en los
Director
míos.
Walsh confirmed
Iván,
with reluctant
necesito que
certainty.
sepa que soy un
Jennifer
dentista
had been
competente y
investigating
ético.
financial
Lo que hice con
irregularities in
usted
the
fue
blood
efectivo
serpent's prosecution.
médicamente, pero
She
también
discovered
fue
that evidence
personal.
was being suppressed,
¿Qué tan personal?
witnesses were being
Pregunté.
intimidated,
Tan
and federal
personal que no
agents were
puedo
taking
dejar que se
bribes.
vaya de aquí sin saber si
Agent
voy a
Torres
volver a
pulled up
verlo.
surveillance footage
Sus
from
palabras
15
me
years
llegaron
ago,
al corazón
showing
de una
Jennifer
manera
in her final
inesperada.
days.
¿Quieres
Jennifer
volver a verme?
requested this meeting with
Pregunté.
you 3
Quiero
days
conocerte
before her
fuera
murder.
de este
Audio
consultorio.
analysis
Quiero saber
suggests
quién
she was
eres
planning
cuando
to
no estás
expose
en una
federal
silla
corruption.
dental. Quiero descubrir
Vincent
si esta
watched his
conexión
daughter
que
on the screen,
sentimos es tan
seeing
real en el mundo
determination
real
and
como se
fear in her
sintió aquí.
expression as she prepared to
Me
risk
puse de
everything
pie,
for justice,
acercándome a
unaware
él.
that her own colleagues were
Santiago,
planning her death.
tengo que confesarte
She knew
algo
she
también.
was in danger from
¿Qué?
our own people.
Nunca había
Maria's
sentido
voice
nada como lo
carried
que sentí
sadness for the
contigo
betrayal
hoy.
Jennifer
No
had
solo el
faced.
tratamiento,
She
sino
knew
la
she
forma
was
en
in
que me
danger
hiciste
from
sentir
corrupt
seguro,
federal agents who were
especial,
protecting blood
cuidado.
serpents
¿Y
operations.
qué significa
Jennifer
eso?
was planning to
Preguntó,
provide
también
evidence that would have
poniéndose de pie.
exposed the entire
Significa
network.
que sí. Quiero
So they
verte
killed
fuera de
her
aquí.
before she could talk,
Quiero esa cena.
Vincent said,
Quiero
the pieces
conocerte
of a much
mejor.
larger conspiracy
Santiago
falling into
sonrió
place.
y se acercó
Director
tanto que pude
Walsh
sentir el
nodded
calor de su
grimly.
cuerpo.
They staged
¿Puedo
her death
besarte,
to look like
Iván?
blood serpent's
Preguntó.
retaliation,
Pensé que
knowing it
nunca
would end
ibas
the
a
corruption
preguntarlo,
investigation
respondí.
and make her a
Cuando
martyr
nuestros
rather than a
labios se
whistleblower.
encontraron, fue como si un
Vincent
circuito
stared at the
eléctrico
evidence
se
of his
hubiera
daughter's
completado.
true murder,
El beso
feeling
fue suave
15
al
years
principio,
of misdirected
exploratorio,
rage.
pero se
I've been
profundizó
hunting the
rápidamente
wrong
cuando
people.
ambos nos dimos cuenta de lo
You've been
perfecta
hunting
que se
people who
sentía
were
la conexión.
complicit in Jennifer's
Sus
murder,
labios sabían a
Agent
menta y
Torres
algo que
pointed
era
out.
puramente él,
Blood
y la forma en
serpents
que
took
me
money
besaba me
from
hizo
corrupt
sentir
federal
como si fuera la
agents and
cosa
helped
más
cover up the
preciosa del
crime.
mundo.
They're
Cuando
guilty,
finalmente nos
just not
separamos,
of the actual
ambos
killing.
estábamos sin aliento.
Vincent's voice turned
Definitivamente
deadly
no
quiet.
enseñan eso en la
Where
escuela
are
de
the corrupt
odontología,
agents
logré
now?
decir. Santiago se
Director
rió,
Walsh's
sus
expression
brazos
grew
ahora
even more
alrededor de
grim.
mi cintura.
Agent Morrison
No,
died 5 years
definitivamente
ago.
no lo enseñan.
Agent Chen
¿Qué
is
hacemos
currently
ahora?
assistant director
Pregunté.
of the Phoenix
Ahora,
Field
dijo,
Office.
besando suavemente
Prosecutor
mi frente,
Rodriguez is
termino
now
con mis
federal
pacientes
judge
de hoy,
Rodriguez.
y luego te llevo a la mejor
The
cena de
scope
tu
of the
vida.
betrayal became
¿Cuántos
clear.
pacientes más
You're
tienes?
telling me that
Pregunté.
Jennifer's killers have
Solo
been
uno
promoted
más,
within
y es
federal
una
law
limpieza
enforcement?
rutinaria.
Maria
Media hora
confirmed
máximo.
the terrible
¿Puedo
truth.
esperarte?
Vincent,
Pregunté,
this
no queriendo
operation
irme y
exposed
arriesgarme
more
a que
than blood
toda esta
serpents.
experiencia
It
hubiera sido un
exposed a
sueño.
corruption
¿Te
network that
gustaría
reaches to
esperar
the
en mi
highest
oficina
levels
privada?
of federal law
Preguntó con
enforcement.
una sonrisa.
At 11
Es más
p.m.,
cómoda que la
Vincent
sala de
Castellanos
espera.
entered the Phoenix
Me
FBI
encantaría.
field office using credentials
Santiago me
that
guió
officially
hacia
didn't
una oficina
exist.
pequeña,
He was
pero
still
elegante
legally dead,
conectada al
which made him the
consultorio.
perfect agent
Tenía
to
un
investigate
escritorio
corruption
moderno,
among the living.
estantes llenos
The
de
night
libros de
security guard
odontología,
escorted him
algunos
without
diplomas
question,
enmarcados,
unaware
y
he
algunas
was
fotos
facilitating a
personales que
confrontation
inmediatamente
15
capturaron
years
mi
in the
atención.
making.
Esas son de mis
Assistant Director
viajes,
Chen will see
explicó
you
cuando
now,
notó que
the
estaba
guard
mirando
announced,
las fotos.
leading Vincent to
Me
meet his
encanta
daughter's
viajar
true
cuando
killer.
no estoy trabajando.
Assistant Director Susan
¿A dónde
Chen
has
looked
ido?
up from her desk as
Pregunté,
Vincent entered,
examinando
her face
imágenes de
showing
él
no
en diferentes
recognition of the
destinos
agent she'd
exóticos.
helped murder 15 years
Europa
ago,
el año
his
pasado,
staged death having
Tailandia
been
el anterior.
completely convincing.
Siempre viajo
Agent
solo porque,
Martinez, she
bueno,
said,
porque
using
nunca
Vincent's
había
cover
encontrado a
identity for
alguien
this
con quien
operation.
quisiera
I
compartir esas
understand you have
experiencias.
intelligence about blood
Hasta
serpents
ahora,
activities that
pregunté,
requires immediate
volviéndome para
attention.
mirarlo.
Vincent
Hasta ahora,
activated the
confirmó,
recording equipment hidden in
acercándose
his
y
jacket,
poniendo sus manos en
preparing
mis
to
caderas.
document a confession
Iván,
that would
sé que
expose
esto es
federal
muy
corruption
rápido,
at the
y sé que
highest
las
levels.
circunstancias son poco
Assistant Director
ortodoxas,
Chen,
pero
I have intelligence about federal corruption
pero
that I
siento
think you'll
como si
find
hubiera
very
estado
interesting.
esperando conocerte toda
What
mi
kind
vida.
of federal corruption?
Sus palabras
she
me
asked,
emocionaron
her
más de
voice
lo que
betraying
estaba
the first
preparado
hint
para
of
admitir.
nervousness.
Yo
Vincent
siento lo
pulled
mismo,
out financial
confesé.
records recovered
Y
from the
sí,
blood
es
serpent's
rápido.
arrests.
Y sí,
Watching
es
Chen's
poco
face
ortodoxo,
as she
pero
recognized
también se siente
documents
más
she thought
correcto
had
que
been
cualquier
destroyed.
cosa que haya
The
sentido
kind where
antes.
FBI agents take
Santiago me
money
besó
from criminal
nuevamente, más
organizations to
lento esta
suppress
vez,
evidence
más
and eliminate
profundo.
witnesses.
Te voy a hacer
The
una
kind where
promesa, dijo
assistant
contra mis
directors order the
labios.
murder of
¿Qué
their own
promesa?
agents to protect
Que voy a
criminal
cuidarte
partnerships.
también fuera de este
Chen's
consultorio
face
como
went
lo hice
pale as she
adentro.
realized the
¿Y yo qué
implications
promesa
of
puedo
what
hacerte?
Vincent was revealing.
Pregunté.
Agent
Prométeme que vas a
Martinez,
confiar en mí
where did you
mientras
get these
exploramos esto,
files?
tal como
Vincent's
confiaste en mí hoy.
voice carried 15
Te lo
years
prometo,
of
dije
suppressed
sin
rage
vacilar.
and grief.
Entonces,
From the same
dijo,
place,
sonriendo,
Agent Jennifer
déjame
Walsh
ir a
hid
terminar
them
con mi
before you
último
had her
paciente
killed.
para que podamos comenzar
Amazing what a
nuestra primera
dedicated
cita
agent
real.
can preserve when
Se
she knows
dirigió
her
hacia
own
la puerta,
colleagues are trying
pero
to
se
murder
detuvo
her.
antes de salir. Iván.
Sí.
Gracias por dejarme cuidarte hoy. Gracias por enseñarme que abrir la boca puede llevar a cosas que nunca imaginé. Santiago se rió y salió de la oficina, dejándome solo con mis pensamientos y la certeza de que mi vida acababa de cambiar para siempre. 30 minutos después, Santiago regresó a su oficina con una sonrisa que rivalizaba con la perfección de sus propios dientes. ¿Listo para esa cena?, me preguntó, quitándose la bata blanca para revelar una camisa azul perfectamente ajustada que hacía que sus ojos se vieran aún más intensos. Más que listo, respondí, poniéndome de pie. Perfecto. Conozco un lugar perfecto. Tranquilo, íntimo, con comida increíble. ¿Llevas a todos tus pacientes especiales ahí?, pregunté con una sonrisa.
I don't know what you're talking about, Chen replied, but her voice lacked conviction. Vincent leaned forward, his presence suddenly intimidating despite his mild appearance. Assistant Director Chen, I know exactly what you're talking about. Because I'm Agent Vincent Santos, Jennifer Walsh's father, and I've spent 15 years gathering evidence against everyone who participated in her murder. Chen reached for her service weapon, but Vincent was faster, his gun already trained on her before she could clear her holster. Susan, don't make this worse than it already is. You're already facing the death penalty for murdering a federal agent. Adding assault on a federal agent won't improve your situation. Chen stared at him in shock. You're supposed to be dead. I was dead. Legally, officially, completely dead for 3 days. Which gave me the perfect cover to investigate your criminal network without you knowing I was coming. Through his earpiece, Vincent heard Director Walsh confirming the scope of their operation. Agent Santos, tactical teams are in position. Federal Judge Rodriguez is also in custody. We have the entire corruption network. Outstanding, Vincent replied, his satisfaction at the coordinated takedown evident. Assistant Director Chen, you're about to discover that dead federal agents have a way of coming back to haunt their killers. Chen's voice trembled as she realized the scope of her exposure. What do you want? Vincent's answer was simple but devastating. I want a full confession about Jennifer's murder. I want details about every federal agent you've corrupted or eliminated. And I want the location of evidence you've been hiding for 15 years. And if I refuse? Vincent's smile was cold and final. Then you face trial based on the evidence we already have, and you spend the rest of your life wondering when other dead federal agents might come looking for additional justice. Chen stared at Vincent with something between terror and admiration as she realized the scope of his planning. 15 years you've been planning this. 15 years I've been living for this moment. The moment when Jennifer's killers face consequences for destroying a federal agent who died trying to protect justice. Chen's shoulders sagged as she realized her criminal network had been completely exposed, her decades of corruption finally catching up with her. Agent Santos, if I cooperate, what guarantee do I have? Vincent's answer reflected both his commitment to justice and his desire for vengeance. You have the guarantee that justice will be served properly instead of through the kind of vigilante action that corrupt officials deserve. 3 hours after midnight, Vincent completed the most important interrogation of his career. Assistant Director Susan Chen had confessed to 17 years of federal corruption, including the murder of Agent Jennifer Walsh and 6 other federal agents who threatened to expose criminal partnerships spanning multiple agencies. Agent Santos, Director Walsh entered the interrogation room with updates that reflected the scope of their success. Chen's confession has provided evidence for 43 additional arrests. This corruption network reaches into 12 federal agencies. Vincent looked at Susan Chen, who sat in handcuffs after confessing to crimes that would result in multiple life sentences, her career and freedom destroyed by her own admissions. Director Walsh, how many federal agents have been murdered to protect this corruption? Based on Chen's testimony, 9 confirmed murders over 15 years. All staged to look like criminal retaliation or accidents, Director Walsh replied, the scope of the betrayal becoming clear. Chen looked up from her confession with something approaching remorse, though Vincent doubted its sincerity. Agent Santos, your daughter was the first agent I helped kill. For 15 years, I've regretted that decision. But you continued killing federal agents for 15 more years, Vincent pointed out, his voice carrying controlled anger. Chen's attempt at justification fell flat. I continued protecting a criminal network that had grown too large to control. Your daughter's investigation would have exposed everything, destroyed careers, and sent dozens of federal agents to prison. Vincent's response was sharp and final. My daughter's investigation would have exposed criminals who were pretending to be federal agents. There's a difference between protecting careers and protecting justice. Director Walsh activated a tablet displaying the scope of Operation Ghost Protocol's results, the numbers representing the largest federal corruption investigation in history. Vincent, Jennifer's preserved evidence has led to the largest federal corruption investigation in U.S. history. Her death has ultimately saved the careers and lives of honest federal agents. Vincent felt exhausted relief as he processed the magnitude of justice achieved. How many arrests total? 67 federal employees, including 3 judges, 12 prosecutors, and 21 FBI agents. Additionally, 43 criminal organization members who were paying bribes or receiving protection. Agent Torres entered with updates from coordinated arrests across 12 states, the operation's success exceeding all expectations. Agent Santos, we've recovered over $200 million in criminal proceeds, seized evidence of planned attacks on federal facilities, and prevented assassinations of federal judges and prosecutors. Vincent's voice carried both satisfaction and sadness. What about the federal agents who were killed to protect this corruption? Director Walsh's response reflected the government's commitment to honoring the fallen. Their families will receive recognition, benefits, and official acknowledgement that their relatives died as heroes rather than victims of random violence. Chen spoke quietly from her position in custody, her words carrying the weight of years of criminal decisions. Agent Santos, I know my confession doesn't bring your daughter back, but I hope it prevents other federal agents from being killed to protect criminal activities. Vincent looked at Jennifer's killer with emotions that mixed rage, satisfaction, and something approaching forgiveness. Assistant Director Chen, Jennifer died believing that justice would ultimately prevail. Your confession proves she was right. Director Walsh approached Vincent with an envelope containing new assignment orders that would define his future. Agent Santos, the Justice Department has approved the creation of a permanent task force investigating federal corruption. They're offering you command of the unit. Vincent opened the envelope and read authorization for the Jennifer Walsh Federal Integrity Task Force, a permanent unit dedicated to investigating threats against federal agents from within their own organizations. Director Walsh, this task force will investigate corruption in all federal agencies. The scope of the assignment reflected the government's commitment to preventing future tragedies. This task force will ensure that no federal agent dies the way Jennifer died, murdered by colleagues who chose criminal profits over justice. Vincent's decision was immediate and heartfelt. I accept the assignment, but I want Agent Jennifer Walsh listed as the task force's founding agent. Director Walsh smiled with genuine respect. Done. Agent Walsh will be posthumously promoted to Supervisory Special Agent and recognized as the founder of Federal Integrity Investigations. 6 months later, Supervisory Special Agent Vincent Santos stood in the FBI Academy at Quantico, delivering a lecture that had become legendary among federal law enforcement training programs. The classroom was packed with new recruits who would benefit from lessons learned through his daughter's sacrifice. Agent Jennifer Walsh, Vincent addressed the attentive audience, died because she discovered that some of the most dangerous criminals in America wear federal badges and carry federal authority. The Jennifer Walsh Federal Integrity Task Force had become the most successful internal affairs operation in federal history, resulting in over 300 arrests and the complete restructuring of oversight protocols across 12 agencies. The most important lesson from Agent Walsh's case, Vincent continued, his voice carrying the weight of experience, is that federal agents must be willing to investigate their own colleagues when those colleagues betray their oaths and threaten justice. What Vincent didn't tell the recruits was that his death and resurrection had become a template for other deep cover operations targeting federal corruption, with dead agents across the country investigating living criminals. One recruit raised her hand with a question that reflected the complexity of internal investigations. Agent Santos, how do we identify corrupt federal agents before they can harm innocent people? Vincent's answer reflected hard-won wisdom. By remembering that Agent Walsh died because she refused to ignore evidence of federal corruption. By following her example of choosing justice over career safety. By understanding that sometimes the most dangerous criminals are the ones sitting at the desk next to you. After his lecture, Vincent returned to his office at Task Force headquarters, where Agent Maria Santos, his partner in both the operation and life, was reviewing cases from around the country. Vincent, we have 17 new cases this month. Suspicious deaths of federal agents, evidence of criminal partnerships, and reports of agents being threatened for investigating corruption. Vincent studied the files with growing determination. How many of these cases show patterns similar to Jennifer's murder? At least 8. Vincent, we're discovering that Jennifer wasn't an isolated case. Federal agents have been systematically murdered for decades to protect criminal networks. Vincent looked at a wall displaying photographs of federal agents who died under suspicious circumstances, each photo representing a life lost to corruption and a family destroyed by criminals wearing badges. Maria, Jennifer's case proved that dead federal agents can still get justice if someone's willing to fight for them. What if we applied that principle to other cases? Maria understood the implications immediately. You mean staged deaths and undercover investigations? Vincent nodded, his commitment to justice unchanged by success. I mean giving murdered federal agents the justice they deserve by exposing the criminals who killed them, even if those criminals happen to be federal agents. Agent Torres entered with intelligence reports that reflected the ongoing scope of their mission. Vincent, we've identified corruption networks in 8 additional agencies. The patterns are consistent. Federal agents taking money from criminal organizations and eliminating colleagues who threaten to expose them. How extensive is federal corruption? Vincent asked, though he suspected the answer would be disturbing. The response confirmed his fears. Based on our investigations, approximately 3% of federal agents are involved in criminal activities. That's over 2,000 corrupt federal agents with access to classified information, evidence, and witness protection data. Vincent realized the scope of the problem extended far beyond his daughter's case. We're not just investigating isolated incidents of corruption. We're fighting a shadow war against criminals who've infiltrated federal law enforcement. Exactly. And we're winning that war by using the same tactics they use: deception, undercover operations, and the element of surprise. Agent Chen, the former assistant director who'd confessed to murdering Jennifer, had been cooperating from federal prison, providing intelligence that led to dozens of additional arrests. Vincent, Maria said, consulting Chen's latest intelligence report, she's identified a network of federal judges who've been taking bribes from criminal organizations for over 20 years. Vincent felt his daughter's presence urging him to continue the fight that had cost her life. Federal judges. Maria confirmed the disturbing revelation. Federal judges who've been dismissing cases, reducing sentences, and suppressing evidence to protect criminal partners. Jennifer's investigation had identified 3 of them before she was killed. Vincent's resolve strengthened as he contemplated the next phase of their mission. Maria, prepare authorization requests for Operation Jennifer's Legacy. We're going to expose every corrupt federal official that Jennifer identified before her death. As Vincent prepared for the continuing war against federal corruption, he reflected on the journey from grieving father to leader of the most important integrity investigation in federal history. His daughter's death had revealed that justice required constant vigilance, even against those sworn to protect it. Conclusion. This mind-shattering story proves that sometimes the most profound justice comes from beyond the grave, and that love can transcend even death to ensure truth prevails. Vincent Castellanos' journey from staged death to resurrection shows us that some secrets are worth dying for, and some promises are worth keeping no matter the cost. If this story shattered your reality, remember, the dead may be gone, but their influence on justice never truly dies. Sometimes the most powerful forces for good come from those who've sacrificed everything to protect what's right. The fight between corruption and integrity never ends, but neither does the love that drives people to seek justice for those they've lost. Subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and share this with someone who believes that truth will always find a way to surface, no matter how deep it's buried. Help us spread stories that prove some bonds transcend death, some secrets change everything, and some resurrections are exactly what the world needs.